Hello everyone, I designed a simple yet humble base that can go through and accommodate pretty much all the essential needs in Grounded 2. Now before we go through and get started, let me show you the foundation for this build. So it is a simple 5x5 square, as you can see outlined there with the grass planks, and then there's just going to be 4 small little corner pieces indicating kind of those huts that you see over there. So now that you know how we got started, let me bring you over to the main base. Now let's go through and talk about the actual setup for the base. Now it is important to know that I did build this in creative, but everything in this base can be built in survival with the exception of the snail stuffed creature. That's pretty much going to be the only thing you can't build in survival. And it's not too hard to get all these materials. So first up, I wanted to go with a layout that actually incorporated basically different tile sets. So on this round pieces here, you don't have many options, sadly. If you can go through and look, you literally just have grass or stems and that's it. And the grass I don't think look all that great, but the larger stem walls look hideous. They just look absolutely terrible. And when you combine them, you actually get a giant gap in the middle, which I am not a huge fan of, which is why I went with the grass in the middle and the stems on the bottom and the top, kind of also indicating a hard break from the foundation and to the roof. Now when it comes to the roof, I utilized the new dome that we have in Grounded, which is going to be the thatch big peaked dome. The only problem with this is it's so large, it actually hangs off the build and it's noticeable to where there's a giant gap in between all the structures. It actually doesn't physically sit on the structure itself, which is why you can see that I actually utilized this piece here, the stemmed curve outer floor, so it actually looks like the roof is being supported and not just floating there in the air. Now when it came to actually designing the base itself, I just wanted to make sure that it did not look like a box. So I'm going to just give you a quick tour and then I will explain how I did different elements. So on the inside here, as you can see right when you walk in, you do have this overhang, all these statues and the lights. These lights are very, very dim. They're not all that bright. And then also one small little feature, you'll notice there's actually a torch in the window, which you will see from the inside as well. And then on the left-hand side here, you can see my storage setup, a little ladybug chilling out over here with a couple of drawers, and then also, again, the torch in the window, so you can see the torch from the outside. Now, this is the snail that I mentioned that will not be in survival mode at this time, simply because you cannot get the actual shells for it. What I did notice, though, is, I don't know the proper word, translucent, possibly? I don't believe that's it. But if you put a torch directly behind it, it actually will reflect the light and change the color of the shell entirely, so it looks really, really cool with the lighting. Now over here, I did also go through and place down the weapon mounts, and you can actually customize these racks into 3 or 4 different settings here. So I just went through and I used a couple of different variations of these racks. A lot of the time when you first place them, they're just plain like this. So yeah, I've got that all set up here. So you got all your crafting goods on this side here, overlooking everything, minus the giant ugly bridge in the back. Yeah, we'll get rid of that later. More stuffed creatures on the inside, your fridge setup, your upgrade stations, the cool new chair, the kitchen pretty much, and then all the spinning wheels, all the crafting stations that can pull from over here. And then over here you do have your armor stands, a really cool, nice little entryway as well, and then the bed smacked here in the middle of the fireplace here. And then out back, I just went through and I threw down all the extra stuff that wouldn't fit inside, so like the hatchery. Cool little feature here. So if you ever have a dual droplet and you raise it slightly, all you need to do is build a stuffed creature right next to it. Okay, this is that half, right? Shake it. And now it is filled up. So you can go through and utilize this creature to drop the water down for you automatically without ever having to actually slurp it up. So typically if there's like 3 or 4 of them, you could do this. Sometimes 1 or 2 will miss. 2 of them for sure will always go in. So I just kind of think it's fun to do. As I'm walking past, I'll click just this button real quick and then run away. It can be any stuffed creature. Then all the jerky racks, the extra crops here, and then the tooth obviously. And then I did manage to fit a stuffed pallet in here as well. And then a cool little design on this side. And then over here, you probably can't see too much. I don't want to... Yeah, there you go. You can just see the same thing. I just elevated it here with the pillars. Now, obviously, if you were not in this position and you were on the base, this would probably be the most dangerous area. It's a pretty large gap for creatures to get in. So I'd definitely elevate this base if you're going to do that. Now, speaking of elevating, I actually went through and used the foundation pieces in here. So we used the scaffoldings in the middle. And then on the outside, we actually just used pillars to elevate up to that same scaffolding height. I just used the stone ones. I thought it looked pretty cool having like this little open area, so not everything seemed so flat. But then I also did create 2 little like pillars here for the items to sit here on the front. It just added more depth with this popping out to a certain length, and then also for the ceilings being half of that. It made it feel far more natural and less boxy. Alright, now that we've done the tour, let me go through and give you a breakdown of some of the elements and how you can design this for yourself in your own build. Now, we're going to start with the roof, as I feel like roofs are pretty much the most complicated portion of the build. Give you perspective of what this looks like from an aerial view. I'll just go through and show it to you like this. It actually looks pretty cool. It is not flat in any capacity. It has the really nice humps there in the middle. It's got the 4 corners as well. And then you do have the chimney there in the back, which looks really nice. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. But first and foremost, the simplest portion of this was just being able to go through and design just these circular pieces, build up the walls all the way to the top, and get the domes in place. And then afterwards, I just wanted to go through and create a peak. So since we know that in the corner here that we're going to have the dome, and we've removed the floors on the inside, so where we can actually fit these circles in, I actually just have 3 blocks here to work with on the front. So we just created this really nice peak. And then having it be flat with the building, we use the quarter pieces to pull it out just half a slab, so it actually sticks out some and creates more depth. And then we also use the half like stems here as well to create a layer, and then we also placed the torch so it wasn't again flat, and then we threw a window there on the top to break it up even more. Now I prefer this thatch style look for the outside buildings, and I feel like this, the other side of it, looks more like a foundational piece. They do kind of look like chips or woods, and they can look really nice on the outside, but I currently like using this tile set on the outside and the other tile set on the inside. Now that being said, for the rest of the roof, all we need to do is follow the exact same peaks, but we actually started over here on the outside. Sorry, the handy net's kind of weird. They changed the controls. So we just follow the basic thatch roof, because you can see there's 3 up here, and then there's a half or a quarter overhang on the bottom. And then once you get all the way up here, this is just a standard flat roof, and then again elevated with the thatch peaked roof. So there's multiple different roof components into it, and then I actually went through and just placed 1 upside down triangle and 1 normal triangle to fill in the space here, but it's barely even noticeable with all the thatch going on here. So yeah, that's pretty much how I designed the roof. I'll show you from this perspective as well. I'm not sure how far we can get with the handy net, but as you can see, it is pretty cool and really sticks out. But it is important, I think, to have these stems here on the outside, both here on the domes and up here as well for the second layer, because it breaks up the thatch a little bit and adds some different dimension to it. Now the next step you need to figure out is where your entrance is going to be. So for me, I knew that was going to be on this side. Then I do always recommend having a second exit, regardless of where you choose to put it. So I went through and I chose the back here. But what you want to do is never create symmetry on your build to make it look more natural. And what I mean by that is you want it to look close enough to where it is the same design. For example, if you look at the front here, you can see that I've got these overhangs here with this nice little bridge, but I have 1 door. Then on the back here, notice that I do have 2 doors, but if you look at the set here, I also have an overhang, and I have overhangs up there, and I still have those bridges, but it looks entirely different, but close enough to be a part of the same base. And then I did also incorporate the actual fireplace here. The fireplace will snap with the walls, so if you go through and place the fireplace down, basically just place it up against where the wall's going to be, and then remove the wall, and it is pretty darn close to flush, so it looks like you have an entirely different wall set. Now the only downside to this is you cannot place anything directly on the fireplace. So in a smaller build, it may kind of take away, so I didn't really decorate this area too much. This was definitely an opportunity. I actually forgot about that until just right now, but we're just going to pretend it's not empty. But anyways, you can't decorate on here. So on a larger build, this is a really cool tile that you can use in between things just to give it that rocky-like substance for an actual wall. Now the next thing you want to go through and do once you've designed both your entrance and your exit is picking a huge flat wall. There are some walls you just do not want to disturb or break up with physical components like walls, like this for example, and that's going to be our storage area. In grounded, the storage area should be always central because all your crafting stations can pull directly from your storage. So I just kept this space looked completely open, but there's very little actual just plain wall space. And where there is, I have a window incorporated with a light shining through. So it just feels like this entire wall is loaded with detail, even though it's just a flat wall. And then I did go through and add this here as well to break it up, to allow me to not only stack more chests, but then I also used the quarter walls here and then the triangle. Now you may be wondering why I use 2 quarter walls versus a full wall like this. And if you look, the full walls do not have knots in the middle. But if I use the quarter walls, they have the knots in the corner, so it actually looks like this is supporting this. Whereas if I would have placed this, there's no knot in the middle. For any builder, you would understand you would not use something like this here because this actually makes it look more supported. And now lastly was actually going to be this wall here with the armor stands and the relics of the past. For all of you veteran Grounded players out there, I'm sure you recognize these little relics here, all the original tools from Grounded 1. And again, these lights don't have much noise of lighting, but they do add a really cool, nice little aura directly around it, and they just look cool. Now when it came to designing this, I followed the exact same concept as I did over there. Sorry, it is a little dark. I tried, we'll just throw down another light. It's dark and I can't sleep, I'm too tired. But yeah, as you can see, I just created a box, so it really made them pop. I could have just thrown them here on top, but I actually just placed down the drawers, and then the drawers actually have a stem-like roof, and I didn't like that. I then used the actual stem quarter pieces that ran this way, but for whatever reason, these pieces here, items do not seem to sit as flat on these, similar to the stone and the clay, but all items sit completely flat on these grass planks. So even though they are not the most durable, being on the inside of your base, technically enemies are never going to get here. They would only be attacking on the outside. And realistically, most raids don't even attack your base anymore. They attack you regardless of where you are on the map. But for building purposes, since this area is completely flat, that's why I used the grass. It also happened to match the dressers here. So I just filled these in. Obviously, I didn't put any armor on them, but it does look really nice. And then again, this flat space, I just threw down a sign. Again, you can see the light, and it looks really cool through the window here. And then lastly here, minus the terrible backdrop, I want them to keep it really open, kind of like a cool little shack, if you will. Again, though, if you are somewhere very dangerous, this may not be a good idea, because if they can see you, the creatures, they will aggro onto you. But I do like how we use the pillars to kind of support this area here with the overhang. Now, the one thing I did not mention is, you know these overhangs on the outside? So these ones here, when they come into your build, you will notice they actually stick inside your build, which I don't like, which is the reason I placed down these walls here, so you can actually barely see it. It looks way less harsh when I have a supporting structure over the top of it versus not having it all. If I just take this down, for example, we'll pull this half floor out. You can see how terrible that looks in contrast to this. So do be careful when you're using this. You can also see it up here, but on the roof, so it does not matter nearly as much. I don't want to drag this on, so I think that pretty much wraps it up. Let me just head outside here. Oh, the only other thing I noticed was that on this platform, if you choose to build up here, is that for whatever reason, these nests could not get placed down directly on this surface anywhere, or on this. So I did have to actually place them down on something elevated. Alright, well, I hope you all enjoyed today's video and the building tips. If you did, then please consider leaving a like. And if you want to see more Grounded 2 tips, then I recommend you check out this video here.